Judith Nemet Almashi, Project Coordinator of the Child Hub. Can you hear me well? If so, please write in the chat so that I know. Wonderful. Thank you very much. The webinar is being recorded and will be available together with the PowerPoint on Child Hub right after the webinar. In order to hear us, make sure that the speaker icon on top black bar stays green. While you do not have access to a mic, you can always use the chat box for your questions or comments, and we encourage you to share your experiences. Also, if you have technical difficulties, please write and we will try to help. Sometimes the internet connection doesn't help, and this is something we cannot control, so apologies in advance. Before I give the floor to Shauna, Promise Project Manager, I need to say how excited we are at Child Hub to have this webinar on. And I think this is quite typical of whenever people talk about dogs or cats, pets, people light up, they become much more interested and engaged. And I think this is the case with this webinar. No matter who I talked to, this was the reaction I got. So with a lot of excitement, let me give the floor to Shana, Promise Project Manager.
Thanks so much, Judith. Indeed, I've been really looking forward to dogs all week long. And here we are. Hi, everyone. My name is Shauna von Blixen. I'm from the Council of the Baltic Sea States. We're an intergovernmental organization, and we are also the lead partner on a project which you might have heard about called Promise.
I think we are experiencing some technical difficulties. We cannot hear Shana, so she's trying to come back on. I'm really sorry about this. This is exactly the type of technical thing that we cannot control, no matter how much preparation. But let's hope that she can come back to us very soon. Let's wait for her to, I think she will need to log in back. Yes, so it's only me at the moment waiting for Shauna to come back so that we get a bit of introduction to the project. We can see you, Shauna. You can start. So we are still trying to get Shauna's voice back. I think systems are a bit slow at the moment, but we're doing our best. Shauna, should we allow our presenters to introduce themselves? Yes. Celeste and Ellen, in that case, would you mind starting your part of the presentation?
Yes, we would be happy. Good morning. This is Celeste and Ellen broadcasting live from Seattle. We also have our dog Molly here, but she's asleep behind us. We'll introduce her perhaps at the end of our presentation. So I'd like to begin by showing you a copy of our website, the homepage of our website.
I'm not able to make this go forward. Tim, can you help us?
Okay,
Yes.
here we go.
Okay, good.
Oh, we got it.
All right.
There we are. This is our copy of the homepage of our website, and it contains a great deal of information about this program, and I recommend that you visit it after our presentation, or if you have any additional questions that we're not able to answer. So we're from Seattle. It's a beautiful city. We enjoy working here, and this program started at Seattle. So by way of introduction, I'm Ellen O'Neill Stevens, and I was a deputy prosecuting attorney for 26 years at the King County Courthouse. That's down there in the Seattle area. And with me is Celeste, and Celeste is a veterinarian. And our nonprofit organization teaches legal professionals about the benefits of incorporating facility dogs in the investigation and prosecution of crimes. And I deal with the legal aspects of this, and Celeste deals with the dog aspect of this. And
Which is much more fun.
Right.
So,
And I just want to say, so if you have trouble remembering who we are, I'm Courthouse and Celeste is dogs, so as we proceed further. I also want to let you know that the reason why we're able to do this is that the law firm Davis Wright Tremaine has allowed us to use their incredible facility. And Tim Bowie is here with us, who woke up very early this morning to be here and help us out. So we really appreciate his assistance and the law firm's benefits. So as we progress through this, we want to make sure that all of the children that you see in these photographs or videos are models. The children that are in a video, their faces have been blurred, but we have permission.
not in today's video.
Not right,
They're models.
but in the forensic interview, the child's face is blurred. So Celeste is going to start off by talking about why this works.
Right. So we're often asked, why bring a dog into the investigation and prosecution of crimes? And what we are trying to do is reduce the stress for children and adults in the legal system. Today we're going to be talking about children, of course, but in the United States we also use these dogs with adults. It turns out that when you are with a relaxed dog, your blood pressure is lower and your heart rate is lower. We think this is because humans and dogs have evolved together for so many thousands of years that we count on dogs to tell us when there is danger nearby. And when the dog is relaxed, we feel like everything must be okay. And this works in a courtroom or in other legal settings, just like it does anywhere else. This is a dog named Karis, sleeping in a drug court where people who are addicted to drugs are under judge-ordered treatment because they've committed crimes. And this judge tells us the attorneys are much nicer to each other when Karis is in the room, keeping them unstressed. This impact that a dog has on a child is doubled when they're allowed to pet the dog. So what we're trying to do is raise the child's oxytocin level and drop their cortisol level. One way we could do this right is let the child be with their mother or other relative, but we can't do that during investigation. We often have to gather evidence from the child, and they're in a room with people that they don't know. And it turns out that if they can have close physical contact with the dog, it has a huge neurophysiological impact on them. This is Frankie in family court in Indiana in the United States, where she's helping this boy talk to the judge more openly. So one thing we wanted to start off talking to you about here is this impact, because going forward, your dog at your Barnahoose will be much more useful to your children when the children are allowed to have physical interaction with the dog. So that this is a very typical child advocacy center in the United States where the child is on the couch with the dog. So the more that the dog is able to be up at a level where the human gets to pet them, the better, instead of down on the floor. So we wanted to find out from you who we're talking to, if you're detectives or other law enforcement people who are involved in the investigation of child abuse, our forensic interviewer, doctor or nurse, a medical professional, an administrator, or other people. So everybody is other people. Okay.
We'll have to find out
I
more.
just, yes, we'll have to find
I'm
out more
intrigued.
later.
Okay.
About this may not be something useful to know for us. Let's see. So we need to go on, Ellen. So you can talk about using dogs here. You can use this and just the left click.
The left? Okay. All right. So in the United States, we call Barnahus child advocacy centers. So I'll be using that term throughout. So as you know, when a child enters a child advocacy center with a non-offending parent, it's a very stressful situation for them to be involved with. And even though the facility may appear to be child-friendly, it's still very difficult for them to deal with this situation. And this is where the dog can be a great benefit right from the beginning. What we do in the United States is when we have a dog on staff, we ask the child and let's say mother if they'd like to meet a dog. We find out if there's any concerns about allergies or fears of dogs. Most of the children say absolutely. And this gives us an opportunity to establish a rapport with the child, because even though we try to be very friendly, we have boundaries, physical boundaries that we have to be mindful of with children, and having the dog available to pet and interact with is very nice for the children. It helps them to relax. So this is a dog in Tucson, Arizona with a child, again, a model, but this is typical of the type of interaction that would take place. The other thing is that since these dogs have been trained to be service dogs, this is somebody with a disability but have been placed to work in the legal profession. These dogs know tasks such as picking up things, so a lot of times we use their training to engage with children by putting puzzle pieces together or lifting things. Recently we learned about a dog that rolls a ball into a group of bowling pins and they play games beforehand. And this allows them to brighten up, to feel great about what's happening there, and relaxes them. And when their mother is happy looking at them playing with the dog and the child is looking at mom and she's relaxed, then the child is also relaxed. So the other thing is after this period of time, it's often difficult for the child to separate from the mother and go off with an interviewer for that discussion about what occurred. And in that case, we ask the child if he or she would like to go into the interview and have the dog along for that. And most of the children say yes, and then the child is allowed to take the secondary leash of the dog and walk the dog into the interview room. And it is a very nice way for them to separate from mom and then have the dog included in this process. So in the actual, and this is walking into the forensic interview room. That dog's name is Elmer. And so in forensic interviews, then the benefit of the dog is to be, as Celeste mentioned earlier, is to be in very close contact with the child, because when it's difficult to describe what happens, it's much easier for the child to get through that process if they can pet the dog. And sometimes they just simply tell the dog what happened. That's happened many, many times. They're not looking at the interviewer, they're just telling the dog what occurred. So right now I'm going to tell you or show you an interview with a child who is about 12 or 13 years old when this incident occurred. She was sexually assaulted by her father, her stepbrother, and his two friends. It was very, very difficult for her to describe what happened. This is the third attempt to discuss with the interviewer what occurred. And on this occasion, we were able to involve a dog named Jeter. You'll hear from Carolyn Webster, who's a forensic interview, who will provide some more background information. This interview lasted about 90 minutes. And during that time, watch what this child is doing with Jeter. She's petting his ear during that entire time. And although it doesn't look like these dogs are working very much, it took a lot of patience for Jeter to withstand that continual contact like that. And if you listen closely at the end of the presentation, you can hear Jeter let out a big sigh, and afterwards, so does the child. Maybe go forward, Celeste. I don't know.
Well, my first interview that I used the dog, I used Jeter. And if I remember correctly, I wasn't prepared to use the dog that way. That day, I remember when I first heard about the dogs being used, I was like, well, that's great, but what exactly do you do with these dogs? They're there. Okay, that's nice, but I don't really understand how you use them. And on that day, I knew I was doing the interview with a girl who was coming in, who was about 11, I believe, so she was on the older end. But I didn't expect to use the dog that day, and I thought, I'm not very comfortable using the dog. I don't really know any of the commands. I don't really know what I'm doing. But what happened is there was another child interviewer who did know how to use the dog, and so she had introduced the dog to the child coming in. She had the dog do some commands with the child, brought the dog in, set the dog up in the bed, and the child sat up with the dog and pet the dog throughout the interview. Now, what was really nice in that case is that this was a girl coming in who had been a victim of multiple people. And we were told just before the interview, as the detective was coming in, that we told the detective, oh, we have the dog here. And the detective was like, that's great, because she's been in counseling, and the counselor says she hasn't been able to get through any of the sessions without breaking down, talking about what happened. And actually, Mom asked me if they could bring their dog in, some little Chihuahua or something. And we told her, no, you can't bring your dog to the courthouse, because the mom had already said that, she really likes dogs, and that would be really nice for her to have. So to just happen to have Jeter there on that day was amazing. And she responded really well to having Jeter there. Throughout the interview, she sat next to him. She did get upset during the interview. It was a rather long one because we were asking about multiple incidents with multiple people. And just from her body language, she seemed to get a lot of comfort from his presence. He's a very large dog, and she was laying on him and crying on him and hugging him. And I think it made a big difference for her to have him there. And then I just remember at the end of the interview, I'm like, okay, it's over. I don't really know the command to get him up, but he knows it's over, and he just got up on his own, and it worked well. So that was my first experience in using the dogs, and it just really demonstrated that for some children, it can make a big difference for them when they're coming in to talk about these things that a lot of times they don't want to talk about. Okay, I'm going to take a little break and see if I have any more questions. Do you want to hang out here with Jeter, or do you want to go see your mom?
I'll stay here.
Okay, good, 'cause I don't know all his commands, so I don't know what to do with him. Okay, if you do want to leave, you can just go see your mom, and I'll come get you. Okay. Sound good? Okay.
In addition to including the dog in forensic interviews, many child advocacy centers also have the dog present during a forensic medical exam or even regular physical exams. And many of the nurse practitioners or physicians that conduct these exams have found that it cuts the exam time in half and really reduces the trauma or uncomfortableness of the children when the dog is present as well. So I'm next going to show you, oh, this isn't turning, okay. Yeah, there we go. Another video from a child advocacy center just south of us that shows what the dog looks like in the actual facility. Oops, it didn't show. Okay.
But she has to turn it on if you want.
We get here in the morning and we'll do a quick lap around the building just to kind of say hello to everybody and let everyone know that she's here. And then we'll take a look at the schedule and see what's scheduled so she
Again, apologies for the pause. We are just trying to get the video loaded. It's a rather large file and it takes time for it to load onto the internet.
Let me answer a question that has come up while we're waiting for the video to upload. The question is the difference between these dogs and service dogs. In the United States and in most European countries, a service dog is a dog that is purpose-trained to help one individual. As we were going to talk about in a moment further on in our presentation, each of these dogs is a facility dog. They've had the same amount of training as a service dog. They have graduated from an accredited assistance dog organization, but because they help many people over the course of a week or month, they are not designated as service dogs. They're called facility dogs by the assistance dog industry, which is a very strange word to me because it sounds like they live at the facility or they are attached to the facility in some way. But it's the term that was chosen by the assistance dog industry, and I think their idea is that these dogs are placed with a professional to facilitate the work that person does. So in the past, the dogs were placed with a special education teacher or a psychologist at a children's hospital, and they help that person be more effective in the work they do. And in the legal world, the dogs help a forensic interviewer do a better job or help a victim advocate do a better job of keeping a child calm while they're waiting to testify, if that makes any sense.
So I think it might be better for us to just proceed onward because we have a lot of material to cover.
So if we can just skip the video.
Unless you think it's downloaded now.
No, we'll just.
Okay.
me see if I can't make it go on right now until she gives us back control.
We're here for other reasons, for a medical exam. Or something else, we make a point to offer her to be able to do a meet and greet with them as well. Days.
Made for days to be with him during this process. And this is another one as well, You Are My Hero. And in the United States, a prosecutor needs to provide evidence to the judge that there would be a benefit to having the dog included in during the trial with the child in the witness box. And this is the type of evidence that a prosecutor would present to the judge about how the presence of the dog would make a difference to the child. So this is actually helpful in many ways. So the other ways you're able to use these dogs at a child advocacy center would be during therapy sessions. And this is a photograph of a sandbox tray, which shows the, may be difficult to see, where a child is there in the corner. This was a domestic violence case. And the child is surrounded by police cars and dinosaurs. And the last figure that this child put in the sand tray box was a little plastic dog in front of the child. And there is another one here that also gives the idea of the child is in this cave and the dog is outside the cave, how the children feel as though the dog protects them. So here we have a poll. And I can't read the text here, but do you have to be concerned about legal issues that could arise as a result of including a facility dog in forensic interviews and therapy sessions? I see that you need more information. I would be happy to provide that at a later time. So just quickly, there are some legal issues that we have to be concerned about in the United States. And that is defense attorneys often object to a child's testimony or try to tell a judge or a jury that the child is just making this up. So it's very important to avoid those situations where you can include the idea of fantasy. So here's a photograph where it makes the Child Advocacy Center look like it's kind of a fun house. And then there was again, you're having this kind of magic land that the child is entering. And then there was a coloring book that a child support organization created. And in this coloring book, they have the dog swearing to tell the truth and dreaming of being a superhero. And it's this non-factual activity of a dog that might make it easier for a defense attorney to say that this fantasy dog is putting this child in a fantasy state of mind and is therefore making it up. The other thing is you have to be concerned about is whether or not it could be perceived as including the dog as a bribe to have the child tell the story. A lot of advocacy centers in the US and Canada provide gifts to these children after they go through the process. This is one up in Canada. And yes, there are many toys there. So it's something to be concerned about if you were ever to say, tell me what Uncle John did to you, you get to have the dog here, or you get this toy. That's something to be concerned about. So Celeste is going to go into describing what a facility dog is.
Right. We were just talking a moment ago about why we recommend this particular type of dog. In the Courthouse Dog programs, the dogs have graduated from an accredited assistance dog school, and the person who handles them is already an employee in the legal system. Assistance Dogs International accredits assistance dog organizations all around the world. Assistance Dogs Europe is a subset of Assistance Dogs International. And there are many organizations throughout Europe who are eager to place these dogs to help children, especially in the legal system. We would be very happy to direct you to one in your country or a nearby country. This is what a facility dog looks like at work. It wears an identifying vest. This dog has a card from the prosecutor's office where it works. I just wanted to tell you what makes these dogs different. They are purpose-bred. A lot of dogs' behaviors, about half of their behaviors, are based on their breeding, which is why some breeds are good at hunting and some are good guard dogs. And assistance dogs have been bred for many decades to be compliant and calm and to want to help people. And this starts at birth. When the puppies are born, they're taken very, very careful care of at the assistance dog organizations. They're very valuable animals. They're socialized and identified from a very early age. When these puppies are old enough to wean and leave their parents, most of them go out into homes or prison dog raising programs where they're very heavily socialized all through sensitive periods of a dog's life. This is a guide dog puppy. This is our local puppy class where when we go, we never know what's going to be there. Pigs or pizzas, all kinds of things. Assistance dog puppies have to get used to sirens and firefighters. This is a little puppy at 8 weeks of age getting peanut butter for going up a flight of metal stairs. Facility dogs have to get used to being groomed carefully. They have to look forward to it, in fact. And most important of all, they have to get used to children. You cannot take an adult dog that hasn't been around children of all ages and introduce them at a child advocacy center and expect them to behave themselves. That just doesn't work. This is a puppy class where they're getting used to cats and wind-up toys and balls. Those aren't muzzles on their faces. They're gentle leaders used by people, especially individuals in wheelchairs that might use these dogs as service dogs. Facility dogs are taught not to eat human food, and they are very heavily socialized with babies and toddlers and preschoolers. And when their dogs are 12 to 18 months of age, they start being trained every day by professional service dog trainers. This dog at National Service Dogs in Canada is learning to be the perfect invisible dog on a bus, to walk on grates without having any reaction, to not worry when there's birds and squirrels and cats running by. And once again, being taken to kindergarten and preschool classes to be absolutely certain they're steady and enjoy working with children before they're placed. The dogs are taught task work if they're to be a service dog. And we put in this picture, this is Oliver from Duo Dogs in the United States. He was placed with 2 forensic psychologists at Canterbury Christchurch College in England. And this is on his trip back across the Atlantic, which was quite an adventure with him, getting ready to work. Before we have to stop for questions, I wanted to tell you that there are a few concerns that your staff or your stakeholders may have when you want to introduce a dog to your child advocacy center. The first is always allergies. This is Tucker in Honolulu at the Children's Hospital. It turns out that dog allergens are everywhere in our Western societies where there are pet dogs because the tiny allergenic particles stick to pet owners' clothes. So when you swab a chair or a carpet at your child advocacy center, it's already full of dog allergens. And having a clean dog there in a public space is not going to statistically alter the number of dog allergenic particles. We're happy to send you a bibliography of scientific articles on this and help you figure out how to deal with this challenge. There are also, of course, children who are afraid of dogs. There are children who, for cultural reasons, shouldn't be around a dog. And we would encourage you that if you decide to incorporate a facility dog, that you warn people before they walk into your center that there might be a facility dog at your center. A lot of our child advocacy centers have these types of signs up to explain that this is a friendly dog. It's not a drug dog or an explosives dog. And we really encourage you to do this, especially if you're at a large center where you might need these in elevators or other places where people might encounter your dog. We would like to leave time for questions at the end. I want to tell you that on our website, we have our individual email addresses as well as our cell phone numbers. We would encourage you, please, to get in touch with us individually with questions. Shauna, I know you couldn't talk earlier before, but I'd love to hand this back over to you in case you need to say things that you could not say earlier.
Thanks so much. I'm back. Can you hear me? Complete freak technical problem on my end. My apologies. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And I encourage everyone to keep, thank you for the yes, that you can hear me. I encourage everyone to keep asking questions in the chat if you have them. One of my questions for you actually is, so it seems that the person who trains the dog, lives with the dog, works with the dog, it seems like it's quite a big commitment. You know, there's no job changing for you. If you change jobs, does the job come with you, or does the dog come with you, kind of thing? How does that work?
You want to talk about that placement
No,
issue? Okay. Every assistance dog organization has a different rule about whether they place the dog with the individual or with the agency. So in the United States and Canada, sometimes when you get the dog and you say you're a forensic interviewer, you use the dog in your work. And if you decide to go to a different child advocacy center, the dog comes with you. Some of the organizations place with the agency. And I do want to say, the dogs come to you at around 24 months of age. They are completely trained. However, the handler is not trained. So the handler has to go through what we call team training, where they're bonded with the dog and learn how to handle the dog. And when they go back to the agency, yes, they have their usual workload, plus they have the dog then. So they have to think carefully, is this something they want to undertake? For most of our handlers, they say it makes their job so much better that they are so glad they have the dog that it's worth the extra time to walk the dog, feed the dog, groom the dog. And after hours, these dogs are just amazing pets. So your family is getting this wonderful dog to live with that goes to work with you every day. There's lots of pros and cons to being the dog handler, but in many agencies, everybody wants to be the handler, and that's another challenge. But the person who wants to be the handler of the dog has to have room in their life for the dog. That is, they can't already have 3 dogs at home that don't want another dog to live with them. They have to have a room and space for a dog.
Are there any other questions? While you're looking at that, I just wanted to let you know that in the United States, there are several state laws that specifically allow these dogs to accompany a witness to the witness box when they testify during a trial if certain conditions are met. We also have all of the appellate cases. There have been probably 10 or 11 have approved this accommodation for vulnerable people. Again, if it can be determined that the person would benefit from the presence of the dog and make it easier for them to describe what happened. We're also just starting federal legislation where these dogs would be permitted to assist witnesses in federal courts across the country. So this is becoming a mainstream practice in the United States, and we think it's just a matter of time for this to be the case in many other countries.
I wanted to answer 2 quick questions. One was about the interaction of a professional facility dog with pet dogs at home. These dogs are always the most submissive dog in any situation. They are the bottom of the totem pole. So at home, if you have a dog that's dog aggressive, that's not a good fit. But if you have a pet dog that's friendly, these guys love it. They're very easy to get along with other non-aggressive dogs. And the other one question I had is about the cost of the dogs. That varies with the assistance dog organizations. I know that Candy Chien in France is supplying dogs in that country for work with children, and an independent foundation has picked up the cost of the first few dogs to be placed. In Belgium, we're working with 2 different ADI organizations who are eager to place these dogs in Belgium. They place the dogs free of charge. So sometimes there is a cost for the dog that's minimal. The dogs are worth about $40,000 US when they're placed, but that all of these ADI accredited organizations are nonprofits and they're donor driven. If that answers the question.
And I have to say, the first dog that was ever placed to do this job was at the courthouse where I worked. Her name was Ellie, and she worked 11 years. And during the course of her career, helped thousands of people, hundreds of children in forensic interviews. And having this dog present in an office setting is very uplifting for the staff as well. We all suffer from our own secondary trauma, witnessing and hearing about these violent events. We've had many facility dog handlers tell us that having the dog as a working partner has extended their career by several years, and they feel happy to go to work instead of just trudging onward until they decide to retire.
Oh, wow. Molly wants.
Is it time to meet Molly?
Molly, what? Come here.
I don't know.
She doesn't know where the camera is. Yeah, this is Molly, our facility dog.
Oh, can you speak?
Speak. Speak. Girl. Hey, Molly. Oh, that's so lucky.
That was a big bark.
But someone had asked how long it takes to train the dogs. Because the dogs can't be evaluated adequately for their temperament until they're 18 months old and then enter this training, they're usually about 24 months old when they come to you, and it takes between 1 and 2 weeks of full-time work to train the handler at that point, even though the dog is completely trained. Oh,
and someone has asked if it's only labs that are used.
So most of the facility dogs that are working are either Labrador Retrievers or Golden Retrievers or mixes of those 2 breeds. We do have one organization, Mira Foundation, which is based in Canada and has a branch in France, that is breeding a combination of Labrador Retrievers and Bernese Mountain Dogs for this work. But most of the dogs are Labradors or close relatives.
I'm kind of a superficial person, and those mixed dogs of the Bernese Mountain Dog and the Labs, they're gorgeous. So, I want one. So.
The first thing I do when we're done is I'm Googling what that looks like.
Go to Mira Foundation, yes. So our handlers have been really working a long time about the challenges with working with children with the dogs, which someone has asked about. These dogs are very, very quiet, and we usually introduce them to the children in a down stay and let the child choose how close to get to the dog. But these dogs come with so many trained behaviors that it has proved very easy to teach them to roll dice or to work puzzles or to turn the pages of a book, and children are usually entranced by that. Now, in a forensic interview, these dogs, now their job is to just lie there on the couch and not play with the child, no matter how they might be induced to do that, because they cannot interfere with the investigation and also in the witness box. But in the lobby and in the therapy room, the dogs play very nicely with the children.
I have to say, in the courtroom, when a child is testifying in court, and in the United States, children as young as 4 years of age are expected to testify in open court as though they were adults. And this is extremely difficult. And having these dogs present during that process does a great deal to make them feel safe and secure and calmer. What these dogs do during that process is they lie very quietly on the floor of the witness box. The child holds onto the dog's leash. They often finger the dog's leash in order to kind of de-stress a little bit. The defense attorneys are worried that if the jury sees the dog, that they'll feel more affinity for the prosecution witness and like that witness better, or feel that that witness is more credible. So what we have arranged to do is put the dog and the child in the witness box outside the presence of the jury. Then the jurors come into the courtroom. The judge should tell the jurors that there is a dog present. Initially, the judges would not allow the jurors to know that there was a dog in the witness box with the child. But then these dogs often, during the course of an hour or two in the courtroom, fall asleep and start to snore or dream. And if the jurors don't know that there's a dog there, that's incredibly distracting. So now the judge tells the jurors, all right, there's a dog here. You can't see the dog. Don't consider the dog's presence here when deciding the evidence. And if the dog should fall asleep, what usually happens, it's usually at a tense moment, everybody just kind of laughs and takes a deep breath, including the witness, and they proceed onward. So it's a nice way to kind of break the tension in there and realize, just kind of put things in perspective. So, and then after the witness testifies, the jurors go back into the jury room, and the dog and child leave the courtroom. This also works up in Canada, where it's much more common for a child to testify via closed circuit TV. And in that case, the dog is with them as well, but mostly they're out of view of the camera. So a jury watching that child testify really wouldn't be aware of the dog during that situation.
I wanted to answer a question that's come up about challenges interacting with children. I do want to emphasize that we never introduce a child to a dog until we've shown them a picture and asked, do you want to meet this dog? And checked with the non-offending caregiver. Is this okay if we bring a dog out? Some other challenges that have come up is we now know that in some cases of human trafficking, the teenagers especially have been threatened with a dog, or in a domestic violence case, the pet has been threatened or harmed by the abuser. So we want to check all of that carefully before we introduce a dog into an interview situation. But that's pretty easy to do, because you can tell, especially with young people, once they see the picture. I am very surprised. About 90% of them say, I want to see the dog, I want to see the dog, even if they want to see the dog over across the room. We very rarely have children say no. We sometimes have teenage boys say, oh no, I don't need the dog. We have this one wonderful interview where the boy, I'm guessing he might have been 14, wanted Molly on the floor. He said she doesn't need to be on the couch with me. But as he got closer during the interview process, got close to disclosing what had happened to him, he said to the interviewer, I think Molly would be more comfortable if she got up here on the couch next to me. Because humans are really good at self-medicating, right? When we want to raise our oxytocin, we know how to do it with the dog. And the dog is very malleable and easy. It's like a little pool of calm that you can carry with the child.
I want to also share with you another story of what occurred in one forensic interview. As a teenage girl was describing her sexual abuse, she started picking at her hand to the point where she started to bleed as she was describing this. And the forensic interviewer then redirected her and asked her to pet, actually it was Molly who was with her that time, asked her to pet Molly instead. And so that calmed her down. It stopped her from virtually mutilating herself during that process. and she was better able to describe what happened. So the marvelous thing about this is you see this happen in front of your eyes, your very eyes, in terms of people physically changing with the presence of the dog. And it's not many people in our profession that get to see immediate positive reactions to the process. So what I love about this, especially in the United States, since we're not very sensitive to child trauma, is that this is a very stressful process to go through. But what I love about it is that the presence of these dogs provide a very positive, nice memory for these children, so that it's not a total negative association. Many of these children, after they complete the process, come back to a prosecutor's office or a child advocacy center to visit with the dog, because that is such a strong bond with them.
We've had a question about what the major prejudices of judges and attorneys are about using the dogs in court, and I'll leave the legal arguments to Ellen, who can address that. But I want to say, in general, our biggest problem with both judges and with law enforcement is that they want to do things the way they've always been done. They feel like for a long, long time we've done it this way, and there's no reason to introduce something new into the process. It just seems like too much trouble. And I have to say that is one of the biggest hurdles to get over. We frequently have judges who, when hearing in the abstract about bringing a dog into the courtroom, imagine their next door neighbor's ill-behaved Jack Russell Terrier. And so they say, no, we can't possibly do that. But when they meet a professionally trained assistance dog who just lies down, as Molly has not been disrupting us while we've been doing the webinar, when they meet a dog that just lies at the witness's feet for an hour while we're talking, they say, oh, well, we can have that kind of dog in the courtroom. They don't know about the existence of these dogs. But what about the legal challenges to using the dog?
Well, so as I mentioned, that's the concern is prejudice against the defendant. It's not fair to the defendant for the prosecution witness to have this special tool to help them. So actually in the United States, we encourage prosecutors to consider providing the dog for any witness, including defense children witnesses, and sometimes even defendants, if they can demonstrate the need for the dog. As prosecutors, we say that our mission statement is to seek the truth, and that means hearing as much evidence as possible from all of the parties, because when you're stressed, you're reliving a traumatic event, you start having the same physiologic reactions you had at the time of the incident, and often that impairs your ability to speak. At child advocacy centers, their mission statement usually is to support children. So they're open to providing these children, their dog to children, testifying in any event. So that is a way to show the judge and the defense attorney that we're trying to be fair about this process and make the dog assist people involved in this process in order to decrease the stress involved. The other thing that I want to point out is, much to our delight, because we weren't aware of it, in 2017, the American Academy of Pediatrics wrote a policy statement that basically said it's emotionally traumatizing for children to testify in court, and that experience can have a lifelong impact. So now when a prosecutor goes into court with a motion to allow the dog to accompany the witness, I tell them to attach that policy paper from the American Academy of Pediatrics to their brief so that the judge can consider that issue. And then if the case were to go up on appeal, then the appellate court judges would see that research study that shows that this is a problem, and also factor that into the equation as to whether or not this is an appropriate accommodation.
I want to thank you both so much. This has been incredibly interesting, and you answered so many questions. Thank you to all of our participants for putting forth all of your questions about how does it work and what does it cost, and of course the challenges. It seems you know, to me, like the obvious choice, have a dog around. But, you know, there's always challenges, and you've addressed them in such a clear and an interesting way. Thank you so much for this presentation today. And I want to say also to participants, if you have further questions, you can send us an email to either me or to, of course, to the presenters. You can find an email on the website for the Courthouse Dogs Foundation website. Before we all go, I wanted to highlight the next webinar. It's next week. It's actually the beginning of a mini-series on medical evaluation in the Barnahus. We start with the framework for medical standards, and we move on to physical abuse, diagnostic workup, and decision making, and also that for sexual abuse. And we finish that in the end of November. So thank you everyone for joining, and I think I pass it over to Judith for the final word.
Thank you very much. It's my turn to say thanks to our amazing presenters, including Molly. I just wanted to remind people that there are certificates available for participants. If you'd like to receive a ChartHub certificate saying that you attended this webinar, please write an email to info@charthub.org. You will see that in the chat box. And also, I would like to direct your attention to the web links. Please check them out. So apart from the upcoming webinars, you will see other information that may be useful. And I would encourage you to subscribe to the ChartHub newsletter so that you can get updates regularly on what is happening around ChartHub. Thank you very much for being with us, and very happy that you were here, and have a good rest of the day.